Mic check 1 2. What is this? Classics back for business. We are back for another glorious episode of We Need Each Other podcast, episode 19. This is going to be one of our most beautiful, intimate, touching topics. And without further ado, real quick, before I start it up, I'm going to invite my lovely host to come in. Real quick, wave to everybody who's jumping on so early. I love y'all for that. Let me just want to give a beautiful drum roll. Let's go. Drum roll for the loveliest co-host.
Hola.
Yes. What's up? I'm gonna stop saying co-host. You are my fellow host. You are. High five to you.
The equals.
Amen. Yo, I've been so.
But hold up. Yeah, we are equal. But you will be leading this episode. So.
Hey, let's get it. I'm gonna get all in everyone's business. What's up?
How are you?
Shout out to everyone who's jumping on early. I love the energy. I love it. Wave to everyone. Okay, so now this is another episode of We Need Each Other podcast, the most intimate podcast on the internet. And this is a topic that I've really kind of been wanting to go in. This kind of divinely came. I was at a talk last Thursday, and it just kind of touched on this. And then when I shared it with you, it just kind of resonated with in terms of just aligning with some things you was going through, in terms of just dealing with the childhood and understanding how everything comes into play in terms of building us to be who we are. So this is divine.
Especially during this month, May being mental health awareness. Yeah. And behavioral health too, and how behavioral health affects us from childhood to adulthood as well.
Absolutely. So we titled this show Journey to Joy. It's just a pathway to joy, childhood. And basically we're just going to just start from the roots. So without further ado, real quick, just to kind of set the stage, I always like to allow God to come into the conversation. I want the congregation bow your heads real quick as we pray. God, I thank you for bringing us together on this lovely, beautiful journey to touch the people. Thank you for giving us this platform so we can use our voices as a tool to spread love and spread joy and spread insight. And we ask you to give us poise and give us grace and give us guidance as we're relating this to the people. Allow our words not to come from fear, but from a true act of love. And we thank everyone who's on the receiving end of these words, that it would touch them in the most beautiful way, whether they see this live or seeing this on the replay, and they can use this to better their lives in the most beautiful, amazing way.
Amen.
All right. Hey. So shout out to everyone who's going to pull up, who's going to see this. Yo, whenever we get back on the show, I feel like this is just like another reunion. Like, I feel like I ain't seen you all week. How you doing? How was your week?
I know, right?
How was your week?
I know. How
was your week?
My week was good. I had a pretty good week celebrating my mom, her birthday, her milestone birthday. My mama turned 60, looking amazing.
Shout out to her.
Man, listen, I'm like, God, don't play with me. Give me them jeans. Today I'm celebrating my godmother. So it's a beautiful week. A lot of birthdays in my family. So just grateful for life. How are you doing?
I'm feeling awesome. I'm relaxed. This weekend has been a beautiful weekend for me as well. I did a little traveling. I went out to Texas. I saw a friend. I was around some beautiful energy.
Out to Texas.
Absolutely. So the week started, well, actually, so let's say Thursday. So Thursday night, me and my brother, we was in Harlem. We went to the Apollo. We saw a great speaker by the name of 19 Keys. And I shared it with you. In 19 Keys, he sold out the Apollo, totally packed, beautiful people. And he had some really great topics. He had some divine speakers. A brother who you actually put me on, Brother Yaki.
Shout out to my brother. My brother put me on, and then I'm putting all my friends on.
Yeah, Yaki. I think he goes Yaki Awakening.
Yaki
Awakening. I think it spells YAHKI, I believe, something to that. But you check these everywhere. So when I saw Brother Yaki take the stage, I was like, oh my gosh, I had no idea he was going to be there.
That's dope.
It was just divine, and it was beautiful, and it totally aligned with this talk. And one of the things I took from his talk, he was just talking about health and wellness in general. And I think so to set the stage for this talk, set set the stage for this talk, I broke it down in terms of just this childhood healing. I think in terms of the stages, the healing, or I don't want to say trauma, because it's also trauma and joy that is passed on to us. But it starts before we even born. It starts when we're in the womb. In the womb. And Brother Yaki, he had a term that he coined. He said transgenerational epigenetic inheritance. And it says that's when you inherited the stress or the trauma from a parent or ancestor in your bloodline. And I would say it's basically the inheritance of, I would say, the trauma and also the joy, because it's both.
Wait, go back. He said you inherit the stress.
You can inherit the stress.
Wow.
Right.
What's the term again? I've never heard of that.
Okay, transgenerational epigenetic inheritance.
Oh.
Transgenerational epigenetic. And he used an example to where I believe he said in the early 90s, there were a group of scientists who had a group of rats, a couple rats, right? And these rats were introduced to a smell. I think it was like a smell of like an orange cherry blossom tree or something like that. They was introduced to the smell. And every time they got introduced to the smell, they would receive a shock, a small shock. And they just kept on repeatedly doing it. They would introduce the rat to the smell, and they would shock them. And then these rats went and had babies. And then now the children of these rats, when they were now introduced to that smell of orange cherry blossom, they had fear in their mind. They had never been shocked, but because that smell that was somehow genetically transferred, the fear was genetically transferred through that smell, that whenever they smell that orange cherry blossom smell, they actually had the feeling of fear that their parents had experienced, even though they had never been shocked. So that's just an example of the transgenerational epigenetic inheritance, where something that's literally in our genes, in our DNA, that can be passed on. So that's, the transatlantic slave trade, or a bunch of trauma that your family had previously went through, your parents, your grandparents, and it's literally something that can be passed down to us. So I thought that was deep.
That is super deep. I just looked up the term because I was not too familiar with it. And it says it's literally passed down through the sperm and eggs. That's right. Yeah, out here having children, all these folks. It is literally passed down through the sperm and eggs. This is why it's important not only to do your own healing, but to be aligned with your partner and make sure they're doing their healing, because that sperm, sis, can carry a lot of trauma.
Absolutely.
Wow. That is powerful.
So on the flip side, I remember my mom said when she was pregnant with me, she actually intentionally, of course, was as healthy as possible. It was a great time in her life, but she was very calm. And I thank God she was very intentional in terms of her joy that she was experiencing, her health and what she ate and things like that. And I think that had a great bearing on when I was born. So not only do we pass on the stress and the trauma, we pass on the good health and good genes. And when a mother's taking care of herself, they give birth to a healthy baby.
Yeah, you have to nurture yourself throughout those 9 months. Absolutely, it's so important. Jasmine said I have something to say about this. Go ahead. Want to join in, or you type it?
Real quick, let me.
Come on, professional.
Real quick, we just gonna invite Jen.
Josh, that's why you are so chill. Hello.
Yeah, I'm telling you. I believe so, because my mom definitely. She said it was very intentional when she was giving birth. So Jazz, what's up, yo? Drum roll. For our greatest supporter.
Hi.
Give it up to our therapist.
Yeah, our resident therapist of We Need Care podcast.
Right.
So this is a topic. Listen, it's a very, very interesting, very deep. It's a topic that I think should be talked about more. Like, people are now starting to understand a little bit about carrying generational traumas, experience, feelings, things from the ancestors. This is real. This month is Mental Health Awareness Month. So all month that's my topic with all my kids, with all my clients, from the little ones to the older ones. And this is a topic that comes up a lot because a lot of times people who are trying to break out of these behaviors and patterns and things that are passed down experience a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress. They get a lot of backlash because you're trying something different, because you want to break out of this and do better for yourself and for the generations to come. So how interesting is that it brings stress, anxiety, trauma, because you're breaking out of what your mom and your great grandmother and your great grandmother and 10 times, before them, all your ancestors, that's all they knew and that's how they survived. So they passed it on. There's a very, Kayla, you probably remember, I want to say maybe it was pre-pandemic, so maybe 4 or 5 years ago. We actually found, and I found this out through someone that I know who also lives in New York City. There's a therapy that focuses on all the trauma that you experienced while in your mom's womb. And we actually made an appointment to go see her, but we got hit with a nor'easter, so we just never made it. But I think that's something that if you can do it, do it. And it's not just traumas, but it's just, everything that you experience while in your mom's womb. Like, that is interesting, like it could be positive too. The same way we have a cousin who, when she was pregnant with her firstborn, would put all the classical jazz, all the music, all of this. She would read to him, and you really see that in his behavior now.
So, amen.
And he's like an old soul.
Yeah. Oh my God.
From all that jazz music that she played.
16 going on 65.
Yep.
But very calm, also very chilled, and then there's the opposite. Anything that you experience, and there's other topics and stuff too, but it's interesting, Kayla, you said that, how it's literally passed on from the egg and the sperm.
Yeah.
One of like the things that I see a lot too, sometimes I have clients who have fetal alcohol syndrome as adults. And like the moms are sometimes like, well, I didn't drink. But the father did.
Who gave you that sperm did? Yeah.
Who passed on the sperm? And so, it is very deep. This is a thing.
It's deep. I think so. Now, even in terms of, first thing, thanks for sharing that, Jazz. We always love to have you on.
Yes.
First of all,
supporter. I be on here all the time, typing, reacting.
we love you all, but yeah, thanks for sharing that. So, in terms of just talking about this childhood healing, when I was thinking about it, we thinking about things that we personally experienced. When you go down to the root, things that you had no control of,
Exactly.
Not only just your parents, but your grandparents, or even generations to come, and how it's literally a science how it can be passed through. So it kind of blew my mind when I heard Brother Yaki explain it in the way he did with the example with the rats. But so when we're talking about healing, we're healing from things that are so deep rooted that we may not even be aware of.
Right. Yeah. And honestly, it might not even be completely healed in your lifetime, because it's like losing and gaining weight. You can't, as fast as you gain it, you're not going to lose it that fast. So, and this is going back, if you're going back 10 generations deep, it's going to take more than one or two to heal completely.
That
but
is,
I mean, as long as you're the stepping stone, we've got to start somewhere.
Amen.
I know. But you know what? I am proud of like our generation, because I feel like we're sick of it, and we're like, nah, like that generational trauma. Yes. And even like the cultural trauma, right? Like that ends with us. And like you said, that's such an important point, because so many of us are focused on breaking generational trauma, and we think we could do it by ourselves, but we can't. So that's so interesting that you mentioned that, because we can start it. And then, let's say we had 80% of the trauma. Our kids can only have like 40%, God willing, 0, 10, but we can start it. But it's definitely going to take more than one person and more than one generation. So
that is very true.
Amen.
And trying to convince, not necessarily convince, but trying to have these conversations with the older folks is sometimes hard, because they don't know anything else, right?
Or there's no awareness. They have no awareness, they're like, it's kind of like they know it, but that's all they knew. So at the same time, it's not their fault because that's all they knew from their grandparents and their parents and the generations before them. And they didn't, it's kind of one of those things like growing up in our culture is like, no, what happens in the house stays in the house. So, you know, it's a problem, but I'm not going to work on it. I'm not going to fix it because it was inside the house. I'm going to go into the real world and pretend, you know, and just now you're reproducing, having kids and passing down that trauma. So I think our generation is definitely aware, and we're like, nah, that ends here.
Yes. Kayla, Mari our cousin is on. Yay, she just wish some more people could see this and hear about this topic. Yes.
Amen. And shout out, I saw your mom just pull up. She said hi. Hi, Miss Nelson. How
our cousin Mari from New York, my cousin from Jersey. Oh,
hello. I saw my aunt that was in here, and my aunt is saying I saw my cousin Zerk. It's a little family affair. So thank you for that insight, Jazz. I appreciate you.
Yes,
so much. And you know you're willing to pop in anytime you want, all right?
All right.
Thanks.
All right, you're welcome.
Still, I think it's important. That's why we titled it A Journey. Like it's a journey, and it's like she said, it may not ever fully be healed, but it's a journey for healing. Healing is not a destination. You don't get there at one point. It's just you constantly discover and uncover different things, and you just go deeper and deeper and deeper. And one thing I would just go ahead. Talk.
No, I was gonna say we mentioned that, and we have mentioned that in our previous episodes too. Healing is a lifelong journey. It's almost one of those things. It's like a relationship with God, right? And I'm also learning that there in my mentorship with heaven. In our relationship with God, people might think like, oh, I'm good. Like I reached a good space in my life, a good level. And you stop working on yourself, or you stop looking for God, and you decide to take a break from healing or from reading your word, and you go straight back to rock bottom. And now it's even worse because all that work you did, you went deeper in. So healing is just like that. It's a lifelong journey. You have to continue working on yourself because God, life is not going to stop testing you. The enemy's not going to stop testing you. So if you reach to level 10, he's going to be, oh, you're at level 10. Okay, now life is going to hit you at level 20, and you didn't get there because you stopped healing, stop working on yourself. So,
dude, once again, shout out to everyone who pulled up. Hello. Shout out to everyone who's pulling up.
Oh, hello.
And to add to what Jazz was saying as well, in terms of our parents going through things and things that they're not even aware of, I think the great thing to approach it with is grace. Really grace, because the same way we can identify some things that we're not aware of, that we're struggling with, that we're still unpacking. Our parents are going through things that they're not even aware of, that they're struggling with. So if they're troubled by things and they're being triggered by things consciously and consciously, we have to say they're not all the way responsible for who they are. You know,
and we're also giving our parents awareness, right? Every time we come to them and let them know that they've done something that hurt us, or they said something that hurt us, now in adulthood or when we were children, they're probably like, oh, I didn't know that. They didn't even know that was hurting them, or that's a generational trauma, or that's something that they picked up from their parents. Because parenthood don't come with a manual. Moms and dads, they learn from their own parents. And, you know, there's certain things that I already know I'm going to apply that I learned from my parents for my children. And there's certain things that are going to change as well. So, like you said, having that grace. And I think now in adulthood, having that open communication with our parents and even our grandparents, if, you know, for those of us who are still blessed to have them, also having that communication with them, because they also don't know. They were living on survival mode. And it's like our generation, we don't want to live on survival mode. We want to be truly healed and happy. And I don't want that trauma going down to my children and grandchildren and all that. So
it's communication. Most recently, I've had a series of real deep conversations with my mom where I was addressing things that was so deep rooted and that really bothered me, and I've never mentioned to her in my whole 36 years of living. And when I started to address them without fear and address them with love, these were things that my mom wasn't even conscious of. And she said, oh, wow, I didn't know that you took it like that. I didn't know that I was even doing that. And she apologized, like sincerely, for one of the first times in my life I really heard my mom say, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. And, man, and that for me just kind of not only warmed my heart, but it was acknowledgement of my pain. First, it was me vocalizing it. I think that's first, saying that this thing has been bothering you for years and years and years. So vocalizing it, and when someone like your mother, your parent especially, can look in the eyes and apologize, that is that was a beautiful thing for me.
Wow, I can completely relate because I just had a conversation with my dad too, and it got so heated. But today, like literally earlier this afternoon, he apologized. That is the first time in my that apologizes. So I completely understand where you're coming from. But again, it's like, you know, we want to talk to them as adults. It's like adult to adult. Let's forget that I'm your child. Like, no, I want to talk to you as an adult, and this is what hurt me, and this is what I would like for us to fix. So shout out to our parents for apologizing.
Shout out,
especially in our culture, you know that's deep.
That was shout out to our parents for apologizing. That was so dope, and it was acknowledgement. So okay, so as we escalate the talk, so I started out by saying before birth, of course, the transgenerational epigenetic inheritance, and just passing on the stress or the joy, because I like to say both.
Yeah,
and it's just the joy or the stress while pregnant. Health and awareness can be passed on before we even born, and then you go from the time that you're born, I would say, to the time of 7. And I also got this from 19 Keys. And he addressed this as just a stage where you're unconscious, and basically you're taking in everything you're just learning without any kind of filter. So in terms of your thing of what's right and what's wrong, it's not even really shaped. It's just literally you're learning from what you're being fed. And that's why it's so beautiful for our caretakers to actually take care of us and to protect us. So you have children who literally, physically, sexually, mentally, and emotionally are abused because they're not protected, and they're literally just at the receiving end, and physically can't fight back. Sometimes they can't even voice that is wrong, or they don't even have the cognitive ability to discern that what's happening is not supposed to happen. So during that early stage, I broke it down 0 to about 7 years old, you are literally just taking a bunch of stuff, and those are the things for me. Those are deep rooted. Those are the things that I talked to my mom about. Those are the things that I was saying, you know, when I was 5 years old, I remember this and this, or you said this and this to me, or you didn't relay a certain kind of love to me in the kind of way that I wanted to. And I've been holding them in for literally 30 years. One in particular, I'll give as an example. It's not really trauma, but it was something I took into account. My mom always said, you know, Josh, you're handsome. You know, she said, you're my fudge baby. My brother's slightly a little lighter than me. So he was her chocolate baby, and I was her fudge baby. And she kept on affirming me in terms of my physical beauty and saying, Josh, you are, you know, just a handsome young man. And it was just a beautiful thing. But there were other things that she didn't affirm. So in terms of my ability to have intellect, or just you can do it, things like that. So I literally grew up giving a lot of value to physical beauty. That if I didn't feel handsome, I wasn't worth much, because that's what I prided myself on. I later learned that I'm very intelligent and I can do it, and things to my own just my own fortitude and keep on going. But I prided myself on just being handsome. Like that was the end all be all. But as I broke it down, that's what my mom championed most out of everything. And I was saying, in terms of part of the conversation, I was saying, you know, I wish you championed other things, or that I was young, that I can see myself as powerful or intelligent or whatever. But for her, it was very on the surface. It was, you're a handsome young man. I felt like that was my superpower. And even now, as an older man, I'm learning to put more value in other things and not just the physicality.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's a form of neglect. And of course, as a child, you don't realize that. But now in adulthood, you're like, okay, like she was present in this area, but that is a form of neglect. And it almost feels like lack of encouragement. And I'm sure she didn't mean it. And I'm sure she did encourage you. But just not hearing those words is lack of encouragement, lack of support, and it is neglect. So
without even knowing.
Yeah.
And like I said, and stuff that like you said, she wasn't intentionally doing, unconscious of it. Yeah. That was her way of really kind of, and I even in that, I thank her for that. Because even you can say to your child, you are ugly.
Right.
You can say to your child, you are dumb.
Or not say that at all.
Or not say that
at all. Growing up wondering, like, well, am I handsome? Am I beautiful? Yeah, I'm not saying it at all. That's why I say it's so important, you know, how people always focus on love languages with your partner or dating. But you also have to learn your child's love languages as well, and your parents. You know, like you have to. There you go. You're telling me I'm beautiful, but okay, I want you to tell me I'm smart. You know, like you have to learn that too with your own child. So
I never even considered that. The fact that actually, of course, I always put love language in the
we
romantic.
automatically assume like, oh yeah, I want to learn my partners or this person that I'm getting to know dating. But
Wow.
what about the kid? What about even with friends, right? Because sometimes a supportive friend can be, oh, a phone call. That to me is a lot of support. Some people don't like that. Some people are like, just text me, or we could check in once a month.
Wow.
But that right there is two different love languages. If I don't hear from my friend in like a month and I thought we were close, why didn't you text me in a month? Like that to me is off. But for you, it's normal because that's your love language. So you have to apply it to every relationship in your life.
Yo, what is your child's love language? I've never, like, how do they
Mic
like
drop. Yeah.
Wow, words of affirmation and things like that. And in some kind of ways, again, to kind of not to get up on my mom, because I definitely appreciate what she really did for me. But part of her caretaking was very when she said, "Are you okay?" she meant, "Did you eat?"
Right.
It was very her caretaking wasn't so emotional. It was very provider-ish, because there was an absence of my dad, especially after 7 years old. He was there from the early part of my life, but after 7 years old, she was so busy into just working and busy into just fighting on that level.
Yeah.
So my love language that I was starving for was even words of affirmation. Words of affirmation. So she beautifully did acts of service, her best with gift giving and things like that. But those are things that I was like, okay, that is beautiful. But now I didn't hear those words of affirmation to affirm certain things inside of me. And as a grown man, I still crave that. So even in my romantic relationships, when a lady acknowledges something in me or says something affirming me, whether it's physical beauty or a task that I did, it's like the world to me. It's bigger than any gift that I can receive or any act of service I can receive. But it's only because I starved from that when I was younger. And she learned to give compliments and affirm me even more. But I've never thought about what is your child's love language.
And I was watching a video on TikTok earlier, and the guy was saying how the same thing, like, and shout out to moms, man. We're not coming at our moms.
No.
And then Mother's Day's around the corner. But this guy was talking about mom. And he was saying how, again, it was a single parent household, so she had to be the emotional support and the provider. And she would always go to work, come back home, make sure the bills are paid. You ate, okay, you have a bed to sleep in. And he said she was present for those moments to provide us a home, to provide us a meal, provide us clothing, she and shelter, but she wasn't really present. So she was present, but not present. So I think that's also very important. And going back to your child's love languages, also allow them to express themselves, because it's always like, oh, you're a little kid, like you don't have an opinion or you don't have a voice, you don't have a say. No, they're developing. Of course, ages 0 to 3. I did a little bit of research on that. They're adapting and they're getting used to their, their comfort zone. And you, as their parent, are their safety. But once they start to being able to really put two and two together, it's like, oh, okay, I have my own opinion. Oh, even though my mom and my dad are doing this or saying this, I don't think that's right. So you also have to allow your child to express themselves, and that way you'll be able to learn their love languages. So, and I'm not a mom yet, but I will be someday, and I know what's a thing to do.
Check it. That's a perfect segue into where I'm gonna take the conversation. But I did see Jazz said I got something to say again. So we're just gonna invite her in. And we love for our guests to kind of tap in with us.
If anybody wants to chime in, feel free. Just drop in the comments. You got something to say.
So Jazz, we're gonna bring you up again. She said, I know she's rubbing her hands together. She said, I got something to say again.
Listen, not only is she a mental therapist, this is her specialty, child development. So
Jazz,
she's like, ooh.
I'm back.
Welcome back, girl.
Okay, you guys, this is great.
Let me see a beautiful face, Jazz. I can't see it.
Wait. I can't see how I look because of the words. I
can see because the comments, but I can see you.
Okay.
Just bring it down a little bit.
Okay.
There you go.
Perfect.
All right.
Yeah.
So, hold on. I gotta go back. Oh, so what I was saying, right? So I typed up, I'm part of this group in the state of Mass where we're redeveloping a form that everyone that works with children has to fill out. And we added generational trauma on there. I have been advocating. I'm like, listen, you do not understand. The Black and brown communities, our Latinos need this. Like, this is what they go through. And so that was one of the things I wanted to say. And I hope it gets through every state. I know New York City was the first state to bring mental health as a topic in class. I think it started, it may be like going on 2 years now.
Yeah.
Best thing ever. And I hope everybody follows New York's lead, because this is like a real deal. This is something that needs to be talked about, since kids are like from very little socializing,
Absolutely.
identifying emotions, all of that. And Kayla, back to what you were saying about the love language. So on the actual website where you can take the love language test, what I've done in the past with a lot of the younger kids to kind of figure out their love language, and when there's a disconnect between the parents or guardians and the child, I do the love language test so that they can kind of understand and see, like, that washing dishes means something to mom, and then hanging out with the kid and reading a book means something to them. But now the website went above and beyond, and they sell different types of games and activities and things that you can do based on your love language.
Yeah, I love that.
So I think that's something you guys should look into and maybe expand on that topic.
And even
in a few.
that, like, you know, a lot. And again, I'm not a parent, I'm not a mom yet, but I will be.
Yeah.
You're a dog mom.
Right, I'm a dog mom. But even that, like, I see, so even at church, I see parents giving kids their tablets. Instead of giving them a tablet, let's play a card game. Tell me how you're feeling. Write down your feelings. Because then you end up, when they don't express themselves as a child, they end up unemotionally available adults. Now you have all these grown women and grown men who can't even be in a stable relationship because they don't know how to express themselves. And it could be something, you know what's sad? Some people can't even say, I like you, or I love you, or these are the things that I like. These are the things that you do great for me. They can't say that. It's not always bad. It's not always like, oh, I can't express that I don't like you, or that I'm not feeling comfortable or safe. Some people can't even say the things that they like about one another. And it's because as a child, they never had that safe space to express themselves. So,
that's very true.
Yes.
I've seen, I don't know if you guys have seen a video, but there's a video, I have to find it. It's a very good video. It's a guy who says, when your mom, being the kid's grandma, is a mental health therapist, and she actually has the kid, I think you shared it.
Yeah.
Identifying the emotions and why he was upset and how he could cope. Yeah. And I'm like, yes, this is what people need. Also, Shanti, who's a very well-known fitness instructor, he and his husband have twin boys, and he does that a lot with his boys. They identify their emotions, and the way, like, so he's been doing it for a while. They identify their emotions, they identify what made them upset, why, and then they talk about it. So he's shown numerous videos where one of the kids will be like, Dad, I am upset because this, and that. And it's just so amazing to see. I'm like, see, they are going to be some very emotionally available adults.
And also normalize apologizing to your kids. That's something I plan on doing with my children, because we're not perfect. Our parents weren't perfect, and they're still not perfect, and we're not perfect adults either. So also, if your child is telling me, like, you hurt me or you made me upset, normalize apologizing to your child, especially in our culture. It's imperative. It really is.
Absolutely.
So I'll share those. I have 2 of those videos. I'll share them on my story after the episode because they're really powerful. I have one on Instagram too. So the little girl told her, and I think they were Black, African American. So shout out to the culture. She told the dad, she was like, I just need a minute. It was so cute because she's like 4 or 5 years old, telling her dad, I just need a minute. Like, you made me upset. He was like, okay, you got that. Even that right there, that's literally breaking generational trauma. Whenever, do you remember telling our parents, I need a minute? They're like, no, you're going to talk now. You don't talk to me like that. I'm your mom. I'm your dad. You know, so even that, the dad taking that extra step to be like, okay, you know what? She needs a minute. And then when she was ready, she needed a minute. She took like 5, and she was ready. She spoke to her dad. So that right there is like, you know, breaking that generational trauma, and I love to see it.
I was so afraid to say anything remotely.
Yo, even if you breathe wrong, they're like
anything considered in the slightest bit to be talked back So what happened was those things that I expressed to my mom as a 36-year-old man, those are things that I wanted to say maybe as a 6 or 7-year-old child. And they actually had been I was holding them in, and they actually festered. And of course they materialized as probably a bunch of different things, and I'm still processing. But giving your child the access, like you said, from a young age to kind of just decompress and express and communicate. And I see your cousin, she said, even after your 50s, you still struggle with these issues.
Wow.
So people are still continuing to process and understanding what things that they've been through, things that were said to them, voicing things for the first time. And once again, that's why we call it a journey to joy, because it's an ongoing journey to
Shout
kind
out
of
to you, Josh, because that takes a lot for
Yeah.
you to even start and say, what made you, like, was it after the seminar that you decided to, or just you were just like, okay, let me just sit and have this conversation? Because that takes a lot.
That
That's a
does.
good thing.
So it was 2 points in my life. One, I roughly around 6 years ago, when I literally decided to not only take my profession to another level, I literally became a personal trainer. My health was in tip-top shape. I stopped smoking at the same time, and I had just received really a bunch of clarity at that point. And it was fearlessness started coming out with me, not only in my career, but in my personal issues. I started just tackling things that were bothering me. And me and my mom, we had went to go see my grandmother out in Georgia. This before my mother moved out there, and we had shared a hotel together. And while we was in this hotel, we just had this alone time that we were just so close that it created the perfect intimate time to talk about it. And I was already in that space where I was kind of things were being shown to me in my dreams, issues with my brother, they was all were coming to the surface. And while we was in the hotel, telling you, talk. So in the hotel, I just remember just saying, Mom, I didn't feel safe to say certain things. One of the things that I brought up, the first things, was just the ability to say how I'm feeling. And I think when she was asking me, how are you doing? It wasn't how are you feeling? It was just, and I said, I wanted to express how I felt inside. And there were times when I didn't feel good, but I felt reluctant to say it. And she, that was the first time in my life that I actually remember her sincerely apologizing. And she acknowledged that there were things that she didn't know that she didn't know how it was affecting me. Also, her trying to interpret how she was feeling. That's how she learned how to show love. No one asked her how was she feeling on a real sincere level, so she didn't know how to give it. And as she got older and got more mature, she's tapping in more to her feeling. How is she feeling? And she's asking me how am I feeling in a real sincere way. And so that was the first thing.
That's
and just
amazing.
Second thing, most recently while I was healing with my foot injury, I got a chance to spend about 6 to 7 months with my mom, and she allowed me to heal at her house. And then once again, these things started to come out to play. So when you get into that space of healing, into that space of fearlessness, that space of love, I think things naturally come to the surface. And it's like you're combating every fear in your life. And those fears are these deep-rooted things that we have that we need to let go of.
Every fear, every trauma, that is so true. Because the moment you start working on yourself, it's like it sucks in the beginning because you're like, I'm doing all the work. I know I'm on the right path, but everything starts hitting you and everything starts showing up, whether it's signs, whether it's conversations that you have with people, you get triggered, you have dreams, but that is all part of the healing process. It's because God is telling you have to face it. You haven't faced it in all these years. So how do you really expect to fix that foundation? Like we were talking the other day, we're like, that's the foundation. That's the root. That's where everything stems from. So if you only fix the top, the bottom is still damaged. You're eventually going to fall right back to the bottom. And life keeps going, and life will, no one's life is perfect. I don't care how much money you have. I don't care what type of perfect relationship you have. You will always get tested. So if you don't fix the root, eventually you're going to fall right back down. So but that's
I think when they say mental awareness, they're saying just being aware of your mental state. I mean, and that's part of it.
True.
Before you actually go into trying to fix it or trying to process it,
acknowledge it and understand.
Acknowledge being aware this hurt me. Or this
I'm gonna share on my page. I'll share my story. This video. So the video that I'm showing everyone this month is called "We All Have Mental Health," and it's like a maybe 4 or 5 minute clip, and it's just kids from all different like age groups, just having a conversation about how they felt and just what mental health is, a connection, your feelings, your emotions, and when you're sad, how it connects to your brain and it reflects on your body. So it's a very, and just knowing that, yes, I am sad or angry or upset, or I'm feeling like I'm depressed or anxious or whatever it is, or something's just not right. Let me acknowledge that. It's the first step to acknowledgement.
That's a huge step. We're so used to just rolling with the punches, right? I hate that little phrase. Oh, I just roll with the punches. No, that's why you so fucked up. Stop rolling with the punches. Like, no, talk about it. Say that bothered you, So that is definitely a huge step. And Jasmine, when you share it on your story, make sure you tag We Need Each Other podcast. We'll repost it.
So okay.
Everybody can
do that.
Once again,
okay.
Jazz, thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's dope, yo. This is the perfect conversation to celebrate mental health.
I feel like we're gonna need a part 2. This is
I'm telling you,
there's so much to the different areas to touch on.
I wouldn't mind doing a part 2. There's all month, so 2 weeks from now for our next show, just tackle another form of mental health. But like going to the childhood healing, I think for me that's root. That's root. So once again, we started that before you were born, there was a trauma or joy or just things that were passed on that you weren't in control of. And then we take it to 0 to 7, let's say. That's when you're unconsciously just accepting everything. You're accepting your direction. You're accepting your viewpoint and your perspectives on lives, and you can't really reject it because you don't have the consciousness to conscious to actually do it. And then I believe your conscious starts to kick in around 7 years old. So from, they say, 7 to 14, you reject things now. And that's when you have the teenagers where they're just kind of rebelling, but they're just saying everything that I've been, that was imparted for me from 0 to 7, I can now say this feels wrong, or this is wrong, or even you have the fortitude to start to fight back a little bit. So that's the part where you start to form your own kind of identity, your own kind of perspective on life, and your view of what's right and wrong based on your own personal conscious. And I think that's a great stage as well, from 0 to 7. That's when you become.
Before you dive into the 7 to 14, I wanted to mention something really quick that I've always been like intrigued by like motherhood and babies, how babies are, well, obviously we know how babies are made, but all that good stuff, right? Like in the womb. So the trauma, like for example, miscarriage, having a miscarriage, that is, I pray to God that I never have to experience that, but I know a lot of people close to me who have, and that is traumatic experiences a woman can go through, even men, because a lot of men are excited to be fathers, and then your girlfriend loses the baby. That's very traumatic. But even the trauma can cause a miscarriage, so they can rule it out as it was not natural causes, or it was in the early stages and it wasn't developing in a healthy way. But in our reality, it's the trauma, the trauma from the sperm, the trauma from the mother who's never healed. And unfortunately, that baby's life was terminated because of that trauma. So it really starts from the womb, which is so crazy. And I want to dive in so much more into that conversation, and I want to learn a lot more about that, because I think that pregnancy is, people look at it as the norm, like, oh, another one is pregnant, oh, somebody else is having a baby. But no, it is a beautiful time, but it's also such a sensitive time too. And this is why you really have to do the work, and you really have to be with someone who's done the work as well, because you could be healed, but let's say your partner's not healed, that can easily cause a miscarriage. So yeah,
that's deep. And like it comes to part 2, there's so much
exactly part 2,
compacted into now, and especially in terms of just mental health in general, so many different branches to it. But that's super duper deep in terms of actually getting together with your partner and understanding that what we're building is it's definitely for the child in the future, but we're actually laying the seeds right now through our own emotional and mental and physical health as well. And then from there, we just literally pass on the deposits of who you are and who I am into this child, and they inherit everything.
50-50. So everything that I'm carrying from my family, everything that you're carrying from my family, it's literally 50-50 now. You have this innocent child carrying all that weight if you don't do the inner work. That's why, yeah. People are always so focused on, oh, you know, I'm going to generational wealth and I'm going to have money for my children. Absolutely. That's definitely important. But why are you going to pass on trauma to your child? Like, come on. You know, so it's also very
generation. Wow, people talk about generational wealth. What about generational health?
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Once again, shout out to everyone who kind of pulled up to the chat. This is one of the greatest talks I think we had, or the most necessary talks.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So now in terms of the 7 to 14, it's literally when you, like I said, you become conscious of what's right and wrong. You start to actually shape who you are in terms of your mind. You say, hey,
you're like, oh, I don't know what I want to do in life. Who am I? You start questioning your identity, all of those things. Yeah.
Something as simple as someone who was sexually violated when they was a child. They literally probably have no discernment that it was even wrong at a certain point. They're literally just saying my father or my uncle or my cousin doing something to me. And it doesn't even register the fact that this is, they probably can't even actually articulate the word rape, but this is a violation of who they actually view it as a norm kind of thing. But there comes a time when your brain starts to have the cognitive ability to say, this is wrong. This is wrong. So that's why it's so important. Specifically, I would say the fathers to be there to protect.
Oh, absolutely.
Protect, as well as the mothers, but to protect, because you have this innocent being who literally can't even cognitively protect themselves. They can't even understand that something is wrong or right. So you're just inputting, or you're developing what they think is wrong or right. And then when they get older, that's when they're actually able to think for themselves. So I think the body is beautiful.
Wow.
But there's actually stages to it. At the age they can become hypersexual or hypersexual and not even know why. That is a whole nother episode
on its own.
That is a whole nother episode in itself, and that goes actually deep. Ooh. That goes super duper deep. Yeah, so deep
there's
that
so many avenues to that. There's because again, like hypersexual, or some people are like don't want to be touched by men at all and go into the same sex relationships. Wow, that is oof.
And they all have an effect on your mental health. And sometimes, like I said, these are things that we're on autopilot with, that until you even acknowledge that this is something, these things are just assumed to just be the norm, or you don't understand why I get upset every time someone comes close to me, or a male comes close to me, or someone says
issues. Yeah, why I feel like I can't depend on anyone. All of that plays a role. A lot of people like to back us independent women, but when you grow up providing for yourself, or like seeing your mom, you know, in a single, like me, I grew up in a single parent household. My mom, right, my grandfather, my grandmother. But when you, that's all you know. So some people love to, especially now on social media, they're like, oh, you know, women don't always want to lead, or they can't, no, submissive. They don't know how to be submissive. No, we do. But do you know how to truly lead? Because we haven't had that before. So it's like you always feel like you have to provide for yourself, and always have that. For me, it's that safety. Like, I don't care who's in my life, who walks away. Like, I know I got me. So in order for an independent woman to be submissive, you truly have to not only tell her, but show her with your actions and your patterns. I have a rule. I don't care what you say. I don't care what you do in the meantime. I'm about to follow your patterns, because patterns ultimately like let you know what who the person truly is, you know. So all of that plays a role.
Because oh my God, you guys are on point. This topic, this is like opening the door that was closed for so many years.
Wow.
And that's again acknowledgement. Well, first, this podcast was created for this exact reason. We need each other. Whether we need each other to initiate conversations, we need each other to offer advice. The same way Jazz comes in and she just taps in with her level of expertise. We need that. We need the people who are commenting and our comments, but it's a conversation that needs to not only be sparked, but needs to be carried and needs to be added to. And that's the purpose of this. So I'm glad to do this.
Awareness. We like to acknowledgement, you know, having those tough conversations that people tend to avoid. We love, because it's needed. It's needed in order for us to heal, for us to grow, and to be better individuals. So
amen. Amen. So then it takes, so I would say, he said from 14, he categorized it from 14 to 25.
Mm.
But I would like to say from 14 to the rest of your life. You're
Oh
kind of just
yeah.
putting it all together. You're just kind of making sense of it all. You're kind of relearning and unlearning as well. You're taking inventory. You're going back and you're examining and all this other stuff. So at one point, you're just pretty much just intaking and taking and taking from the very young age where you have no filter. You can't discern what's right or wrong. And then you start rejecting, saying this doesn't feel good. You're starting to shape what that looks like.
Sorry, not to cut you off. You almost waters, right? Like you're like, okay, I couldn't really speak up when I was a child, or I couldn't, for some people, right? I feel, thank God, I feel like I've always been very vocal. But some people feel like they couldn't really say much as a child. But then when you step into your teenage years, you're like, oh, let me see if I say this. You test the waters with your teachers. You get disrespectful, you know, in school. You're like, okay,
Rebellious.
you know, you test the water with your mom. You slam the door to your bedroom, you know, look at that. And you're like, I'm just trying to see if I'm gonna die tonight or not, you know. So you start doing the waters and really be engaged, and that ties into your identity and your personality, and like, okay, is this who I am? And then you also go back to, after I did that, how did I feel? So is that my personality? Am I an angry person? Am I a happy individual? And I'm an extrovert, an introvert. All of that plays a huge role. So
absolutely. And I think so that seems to take place like from 14 on.
yeah,
When you're really realizing who you are, you're maybe apologizing, or you're just going back and taking inventory and saying, hey, is this who I really want to be? Or you're starting to develop that real personality based off of everything you have learned, everything you rejected, and who you want to go on from there. So I think that's like the powerful point. And for me, he said 14 to 25, but I would say 14 until the rest of your life, because that thing doesn't stop.
I'm glad you mentioned 14 to the rest of your life, because I literally feel that now. I just turned 30 in October, and it's like, you know, in your 20s, your 20s is a little bit of everything. It's like, ooh, I'm trying to figure this thing out, you know. But now in my 30s, and I've always been vocal, but now in my 30s, I feel like I have grace for people, but I'm also like, my boundaries are at level 100. Like, like my boundaries are level 100, and you can't mess with them. I'll have grace for you, but don't be trying to mess with my peace and my boundaries. Like, that's not gonna happen. It's like some certain things that we'll let slide in our 20s. It's like, okay, you know, no. Once you reach your 30s, you're really unapologetic, and it's like, not sliding. Like, I'm grown now. Like, we ain't doing that, you know. So like, I'm so glad you mentioned from 14 to lifelong. And like Madi said in the comments, even in her 50s, again, because life is always testing you. You're always put in different situations. I was having a conversation with one of my friends the other day. He's like, you know, you never really truly finish getting to know your partner. And I was like, you never truly finish getting to know yourself, because there's certain things that you don't know how you're going to react until you're put into that situation. So you can think that you can foresee it or predict how you're going to react, or what's going to be your input, or whatever you're going to say and do, but you don't know until you're put into that situation. So we don't ever finish getting to know ourselves either. So
I love that when you said that crossing the 30 path. And for me, that crossing that 30 path was when I began to have that conversation with my mom. I probably was actually 30 years old. I began to actually understand who I was. I began to develop a deeper sense of competence and confidence in myself, really taking inventory of everything I've learned for the past 30 years and say, okay, this is now, I don't want to say mastery, but this is now me just the culmination of it all, how it's coming together. And now your real identity comes into play. You're able to walk with your chest out and say, this is who I am, or this is what I'm not going to accept. So that's
I'm laughing at the comment because Jasmine said, you think you are my mom at 30.
At 30, I know who the hell I am. I know who the hell I am, and I know who the hell I ain't.
I'm like, respect your elders. I'm 30. Respect.
And once again, to point to your cousin's point when she said in terms of that learning or that examination goes into your years on well into your 50s and the rest of your life. So when you have people who are our elders, who are still willing to kind of apologize and willing to kind of relearn and things like that, that is beautiful. So when they say can't teach an old dog new tricks, That's just someone who just refuses to be better, refuses, someone who's just sitting in their funk and says, this is who I am and this is who I'll always be.
Right.
But it's beautiful to see someone, regardless of any age, say, hey, I was wrong. I can do this better. And it doesn't matter if I've been doing this for the past 60 years of my life. I've learned today a better way to do it, and I can commit to growing in a more beautiful way.
Especially someone at that age who, like our parents, who literally just apologized to us. Someone apologizes who's never received an apology in their life from their parents. That is so deep, and that is definitely something to acknowledge, because it's like they don't know what that feels, but they do know what it feels to not get that apology, even in their 50s and their 60s. So now they're trying to do it with their children. So that is
to kind of bring it all like full circle. Yes, that's a great point. Okay, so real quick story. My grandfather had passed away sometime last year, and that was a pivotal point in terms of the growth for me and my father. Because what happened was, when his dad died, I saw, yes, it was my grandfather, but I saw the pain in his eyes because it was his death. And he ran into my arms. He didn't run, but he went into my arms and we embraced, and the roles were reversed for a second. And I was consoling him. He was my dad, but as if he was my child. And he was there crying and crying, and he needed consolation. And then directly after that, things started coming up for him. And we sat at the dinner table. It was me, him, my brother, and I think my little brother as well. And he started saying about the things that he experienced as a child, how his father taught him. And they were mirroring some of the same behaviors that he was exhibiting to me. So here I was accusing him of being an unemotional father or being this, and it was just literally how he was learning love.
That's awesome.
And him articulating that to me made me seem as human. And I took him off the pedestal of being my dad and saying, this is what he's went through. This is what he has in his system. So this is what he gave to me. But then again, that's when the apology came from him as well. But also it was me recognizing that we only give what we have given. We have been given. And I saw him as a human being. I imagined him being a child and his dad treating him a certain kind of way. So my dad, I would call him non-emotional, but he said he never received a hug from his dad until he graduated from college. That was like, so in terms of and then I look at my grandfather, he was a little more huggy, but later in his years, but I'm sure.
With the grandchildren. Yeah. Because again, when they have a grandchild, that's like a second opportunity to fix everything that they didn't do with their children. Yeah.
And even with my grandfather, I remember forcing him to hug me. He'd be like, hug my neck. And I was like, and he used to still feel uncomfortable, but that was just showing who he was with my father. And I can imagine, growing up, shaking your son's hand. I don't know how they used to greet each other. I have no idea.
Right? Give each other dab. You giving dab to a 9-year-old. When all they want is a hug. Right.
But my grandfather, he was an excellent provider in terms of going out, but his love language was just different. But when my dad exposed that to me, I was like, wow, imagine being a grown man and never received a hug from your dad. And then I don't blame him for how he exhibited his love to me. And actually, in thinking with grace, he did a good job. Because if he never received a hug since he hugged me, he probably didn't say the words of affirmation that I wanted, but I gave him grace and I saw him as a human being.
Wow.
Let me read some of these comments. Shout out to all of us for learning and growing, the parents for acknowledging and learning, and us for changing these things. Absolutely.
Take the out of that, because unfortunately we don't have comments. It's like Instagram. Yeah, I gotta fix that Instagram. When we post our live, our comments disappear.
Absolutely. And then, okay, cousin said, I wish platforms like this existed when my mom was a child and went through the worst trauma a child can go through, along with her other 6 siblings, of losing their mom to domestic violence.
We're definitely having part 2.
Wow. Yo, this episode has been amazing. This is the acknowledgement of mental health. from the childhood healing perspective, but there's so many other perspectives in terms of this healing or this mental health journey. And we touched on mental health a few times on our show from different aspects. I remember a few months ago, it was National Men's Health Awareness Month that we focused on that. We had Jazz on, and she talked about an aspect of mental health, and this is from the childhood healing. But this conversation continues to go on.
Yeah, we had two dope. We had three. We have had three dope mental health therapists. Jasmine and Jay.
Right, absolutely. So shout out to everyone who's pulled up to the chat. Shout out to everyone who's viewing this live or on the replay. Another thing, this will be the first show that we're going to take the audio, we're going to rip it and put it on all platforms. So we're going to look out for We Need Each Other podcast.
We are growing
platforms, and we're really going to expand this platform because people want to listen to this while they're driving in their cars, and even though the video will still be available on YouTube, We Need Each Other, but will also be available on all audio platforms.
Now I feel like we're about to really be official. Like Each Other podcast is really out. We've been official. We've been a podcast, but
absolutely.
You know, we're going into bigger and better things. So.
I remember. Okay.
This episode served as a healing platform to whoever tuned in and whoever's listening or watching the replay. You know, this is one of our callings, and this is why We Need Each Other podcast started. So it's helping us, and we hope that it helps you as well. We know it's helping you as well. So.
Amen. Hey, you had challenged me. I had wrote some music earlier.
Oh yeah, you gonna rap? So shifting gears real quick. Wait, you know what?
So it was a beautiful thing. So now as I start to write and I start to work on my level of love, it just comes in the most beautiful way. And it comes through my writing, it comes through in my poetry, it comes through in everything. So this is something that Kayla challenged me earlier in the week to actually say on the show. I said, hey, I'm on my path, I'm on my way, I'm just receiving greatness. I make my way with all my faith, I don't believe in haters. I just take it day by day, I just proceed to face it. You say the reaper's waiting, I say God's even greater. Don't stay trapped in your mind because that feeling will get you. I'd rather feel it in my heart with the realest intentions. If I sin, I miss the mark, I'm just killing my mental. I repent what I've been through. Who said living is simple? Every day I search my soul, my redemption's official. Life sways left and right when that pendulum hits you. Nope, it comes back around. There's up and there's down. Sometimes you're up in the clouds, other times stuck in the ground. I found love is real when you feel it, it hits you. Intense, it makes sense with focused attention will get you. I kiss you, then reminisce on the bliss because I miss you. We fight but we get through, in spite of the issues. A crystal, but you're shining just like a diamond. My kind of assignment, defining alignment. It's time to put time in. I've always had options, and baby, a godsend. And this time I'm reminded the climate has been special since the day I met you. I let you be yourself when no one else would get you. A vessel, let him use me as the instrument for his benefit until the day we get hitched. Classic.
Boom. Mic drop. Oh, yeah, if y'all didn't know, Josh is a rapper. That's a form of healing. Good job. That's dope. That's dope.
I think that was a great way to end it. But yes, this has been another great episode of We Need Each Other podcast. Thank you guys for joining us.
We appreciate you.
I think we're going to do part 2 of mental health.
Sure. Mental and behavioral health. Mental and behavioral health. How our childhood trauma has affected our behavior as an adult as well. We'll on that.
And also, just feel free to drop us a line if you think of any other topics or any things that need to be explored, and you can just definitely drop us a message, and we'll definitely take all that into consideration. But we want to talk about the things that are rarely discussed openly and honestly, and talk about them in the most intimate way. So shout out to everyone.
Shout out to everyone who pulled up. We appreciate you all, especially Jazz and Madi. Y'all were in the comments deep. Thank you very much. And before we go, one thing you're grateful for.
I'm grateful for my mom. I'm grateful for her growth. And I think when I had that beautiful conversation, her ability to even accept it, or her ability to now apologize, whatever, was just a mirror of where she has gone. And that was one of the things she acknowledged. She said, when the time I was talking about at 6 years old, mom was maybe 25 or so. You know what I mean? You're talking to a very young woman versus who she is now. And I'm just super duper appreciative of the great woman she has grown into and now is feeding me all over again and helping me heal. So I'm grateful for my mom.
That's dope.
What are you grateful for in this moment?
I'm grateful for the apology that I received from my dad today, earlier today. Not only is that going to help us strengthen our relationship, but it's also going to help me open up and talk about things that I never talked about and all that. And it will eventually help me to be a great parent. So I'm grateful for his apology. I'm grateful for his growth. And yeah, grateful to be here.
You know, I'm grateful for everyone who shows up each and every show we have. I'm grateful for the extended family. I'm grateful for all our guests. I'm grateful for Jazz.
Oh my God. Best sister.
Being our number one supporter. Shout out to you. Yo,
this was dope. Part 2, stay tuned, you guys. We're definitely coming back with part 2.
I love y'all. Until next time. All right. Pew, pew, pew.